What's up, cucks? My last video made me realize that I have to do another video on The Miz, right? Because what's happening to The Miz, in my opinion, amounts to grand larceny. This is the biggest form of disrespect I've ever seen. The fact that The Miz has to curtain jerk for jobbers like Austin Theory at this point and Gunther while he's in a feud with Tommaso Ciampa is disrespectful. The Miz is better than basically everyone in the main roster that wrestles consistently, right? There are a few exceptions, of course. Roman Reigns is an overall better character and he has been booked better and he has ran the ball with it, right? But that's about it, motherfucks. It's basically Roman Reigns, right? And then a bunch of part-timers like Cena and maybe Randy Orton. And honestly, even Roman Reigns, all the three people just mentioned, they benefit from their superior booking, right? Like John Cena, if he lost all the time, wouldn't be the John Cena that we know and love, motherfucks. Same thing with Roman Reigns, right? But The Miz, as far as I'm concerned, he's like top 3 in the company right now. You look at what happens to people like Drew McIntyre, to people like Sheamus. Actually, Sheamus, I put him almost right there with The Miz. But a lot of these people that just fizzle out, right? Fizzle out. Not only do they fizzle out in terms of their booking, but they fizzle out in terms of their excitement because they never really were exciting. Drew McIntyre harkens back to my previous video of people with zero character development. You know, you can have Drew McIntyre come back and kick ass and be dominant, and that's all fine and dandy. But the truth is the truth, right? This changes nothing with respect to his presentation. Afterwards, many, many months later, you can give him a sword and say, oh, this sword is named after his mother, or some cringy nonsense like that. Like, what the hell are you talking about? Why? Why does he have a sword? That's just stupid, right? You can do these things, and that shows that he's a poorly written character because it's not inconsistent with Drew's character to have a sword one day, right? Because he's been so poorly developed that if he comes out with a sword, a shield, a gun, a stick up his ass, all of these things make perfect sense with respect to the way that the character has been developed. Do you understand what I'm saying? And with that in mind, we then have to ask ourselves follow-up questions, right? Follow-up questions. The number one follow-up question is, why is it that people like him, like Drew McIntyre, like Gunther, to a lesser degree Sheamus, Austin Theory, these people that have really, not Sheamus, I won't put him in there. He has proven himself. But all the other ones that I just mentioned, despite the fact that they do nothing different, for some of them for years. Like Gunther has been doing nothing for years, and people are like, push this man to the main event. Why? Why when you have The Miz? You know what I'm saying? The fact that The Miz dropped off as a main eventer is a sin. I don't know why people even tolerated this. As soon as someone said, well, we're gonna have Kevin Owens beat The Miz, everyone in the boardroom should have stood up and said, whoa, wait a second. We're gonna have Kevin Owens, who's about the same age as The Miz basically. We're gonna have this jobber, this fat nobody with no actual charisma. We're gonna have him beat a guy that we had in the main event of WrestleMania? That's what's gonna happen here? Remember when Miz was trading wins and losses with Wade Barrett? Are you kidding me? Wade Barrett, who never amounted to anything because he was boring, right? Even though he had some stints, he could have been handled differently, but the fact remained, he was boring and he had a million gimmicks, right? He was another Baron Corbin. Nothing was gonna come out of this, and everyone realized this almost immediately, right? Because he's kind of boring. I mean, he has some charisma, he could talk on the mic, but he was boring overall. He had a boring moveset, he had a weird look, you know, there wasn't anything special about him, right? It wasn't gonna go anywhere. The Miz, on the other hand, has cut some of the best promos in the last 20 years, and despite this, and the fact that he consistently puts on good matches, and the fact that they do respect him, because come WrestleMania time, he's always in some high-profile thing. It's him versus Shane, it's him versus Bad Bunny, it's him versus, you know what I mean? Like, he's always in some position in the card that does not reflect where he is throughout the year, right? All of a sudden, people forget about The Miz. This man, who was honestly a shining light when wrestling was going down the drain. If you remember the way people talked about The Miz, when he was United States champion, they're like, oh my God, I can't wait till this guy beats Randy Orton. The era of The Miz is here, right? But instead, people got sidetracked. They got sidetracked. Instead of focusing on good character development and actual skills, they got sidetracked by jobbers like Sin Cara, like Del Rio, right? These people that had nothing. They brought nothing to the table. They were obviously going to be transitory jobbers. Jack Swagger is another one. You know, there's so many of these guys that you're like, why is this guy even near the card with The Miz? There's a few good ones too, like Ryback. I enjoyed Ryback. But mostly, it was people that didn't deserve the spot. A bunch of goofs that nobody could take seriously. And somehow, because these people have to beat someone credible, they made Miz a jobber to the stars, right? The fact that The Miz has to have feuds and had like countless feuds with Dolph Ziggler is ridiculous. The Miz should be 100 times higher on the card than Dolph Ziggler, right? The Miz and R-Truth, another underrated gem, they put them together and that was magic. It wasn't magic because like they wrestled Cena and The Rock, right? It was magic because they're both capable at their jobs, both in terms of charisma, mic skills, as well as in-ring performance, right? The Miz, in my personal opinion, should be given a final arc, a redemption arc, a face turn where he says, you know what, I'm tired. You know, the same thing that Dolph Ziggler did 100 times, except it's going to resonate way more. He's going to get way more over because he's just better than Dolph Ziggler, right? Miz should come out and say, I've been putting over these jobbers like Nakamura. The fact that Nakamura comes from NXT and beats The Miz, Bobby Roode, who actually is pretty good, but nevertheless amounted to nothing as far as I'm concerned, right? Karrion Kross, Tommaso Ciampa now, Johnny Gargano. The Miz is better than all these people combined. You know, if someone knocked you out and you forgot everything you knew about wrestling and you watched the highlight of The Miz's career and you watched the best parts of everyone else's career that I just mentioned, including Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens, you'd be like, The Miz is obviously better. Why are these people even on TV? You know what I mean? But The Miz, unfortunately, is hampered by the fact that he is too good to be a jobber, but he's not good enough, apparently, to be a Sami Zayn. The things that you do with Sami Zayn are things that you can only do with a jobber. Same thing with Jey Uso. Why do you think it's happening again? Because you can do the same thing multiple times. You can take The Miz, you can take Jey Uso, and you can just put them in there, right? Nothing would change. Like, ask yourself, would it matter at all if it's, like, Jimmy Uso got injured, so Jey Uso became main event Jey Uso like years ago, right? If Jey Uso had gotten injured, Jimmy Uso would be main event Jimmy Uso. And the story would play out the exact same way because they are indistinguishable. They're even twins, as a matter of fact, right? If instead of Sami Zayn being the honorary Uso, if you hired Fandango and you made him, Dango, the honorary Uso, the story would play out the exact same way. In other words, Sami Zayn, Jey Uso, their contributions to the story, Solo Sikoa, their contributions to the story are essentially zero, right? Even Roman Reigns, if you ask me, you could have done the same thing that you did. It wouldn't be called the Bloodline, but you could have had Legacy, right? If they wanted to, they could have done it with Legacy back in the day, and they could have had Randy Orton become the champion, and then Ted DiBiase turns on him, and then Cookie Rhodes turns on him, and then, you know, that would happen the same way, right? There's nothing special about this. There's nothing special about this. At this point, it's gotten to the level where something like Judgment Day is more exciting. Where Finn Balor, I can't believe I'm saying it, Finn Balor, boring-ass Finn Balor, who also could be easily replaced in his group, right? His group is more entertaining. Now, in my opinion, the reason why the group works is because of Dom, almost exclusively. It's almost him. If you didn't have Dominic Mysterio in the group would be a bunch of jobbers and that nobody would give a flying fuck about except for Rhea Ripley because she's a woman in the women's division, and over there she stands out. But otherwise, like Finn Balor and Damian Priest are unremarkable. Like, Damian Priest, who I like overall, he's basically Baron Corbin. I mean, there's no real difference, right? He's just this big guy who just loses a lot and then once in a while wins. Like, he even got the Money in the Bank, just like Baron Corbin. So, the idea is this. If Baron Corbin didn't get over, why in the blue hell would Damian Priest get over, right? The only way that they can answer this question is to just allow Damian Priest to do more, right? They can just have him win the championship. But why do all this? Why even have, like, The Miz should be, like, that should be his thing. You know, Kofi Kingston, his thing was like, he gets thrown out during the Rumble, but he always saves his own ass. Miz's thing should be that every couple of Money in the Banks, The Miz wins the Money in the Bank. That should be his thing. He should have like 5-6 title runs based only on his Money in the Bankness, right? That, like, why waste time giving it to Otis if you're gonna give it to The Miz anyways? Why waste time giving it to Baron Corbin if he's not gonna cash it in? Why waste time giving it to Austin Theory if all he's gonna do is win the US title? Just those 3 times, if you had given it to The Miz instead, everything would be better. Because motherfucks, because Austin Theory would be in the exact same position, Damian Priest would be in the same exact position, Baron Corbin would be in the same exact position, Otis would be in the same exact position, but The Miz would have one more main eventer on your hands, courtesy of The Miz, right? And you could have him defend the title once in a while, you know? I'm not saying, like, The Miz, I get it. You're gonna have Miz versus Lashley, Lashley's gonna win. Miz versus Drew McIntyre, Drew's gonna win, I get it. You know, like believe me, I'm a big proponent of that. I'm a big proponent of things making sense. I know that The Miz can't beat up Lashley, so I understand. But you can have him sneakily beat Lashley once. Give him like a 2-month title reign, right? Have him feud with Orton. That would be a great feud. But why? Why? When you have Matt Riddle to put out there and job him out for no reason. Why? For what reason would you push The Miz when Matt Riddle is in line, when Gunther is in line? In 5 years, when Gunther's released and he's wrestling with Claudio Castagnoli in AEW, people are going to be like, I can't believe they dropped the ball with Gunther. I can. And as a matter of fact, I'm saying it right now, motherfucks. I'm saying it right now. I've never been wrong about these things. I've never once said this guy's a jobber and the guy hasn't been a jobber, right? The only minor exception is Cody Rhodes. But even the whole time, I've always said, Cody Rhodes, he's better than the average mid-carder, but he's still a mid-card jobber. And I still believe that, motherfucks. So with that being said, The Miz deserves a push. The Miz deserves a lot more than what he's gotten. As a matter of fact, it's like a Mark Henry situation. The fact that Mark Henry had to sit there while people like Viscera, Kozlov, Ezekiel Jackson, Gene Snitsky, all of these people that are obviously worse than Mark Henry, you just look at them and you're like, why is Snitsky on my TV? Just put Mark Henry, give him the Snitsky role. You know, why? For what reason does Snitsky need a job? Fire Snitsky, fire Ezekiel Jackson, fire Kozlov, and just do everything you're gonna do with these jobbers. Put that all on Mark Henry. You have one very strong character, and then you can keep the rest as jobbers if you so want it. That being said, motherfuckers, take care of yourselves.